What's going on, everyone? Matic here, and today we're going to talk about, believe it or not,
Walking on sunshine. Whoa! I don't feel good.
walking. So why are we going over walking, but more specifically on how to walk properly? Well, I wound up having to replace the insoles of my boots that I wear for work, but I also got a new pair of shoes that I'm kind of trying out, and I've been wanting to make this type of video for a while. I just needed the correct time on when I was changing footwear. So when I say that I change out the insoles to my boots, what exactly do I mean? Well, primarily, one, laziness. Two, by wearing my insoles out, or at least wearing them far longer than most people usually will, it allows me to see something very specific. And that is on how my foot is actually striking the ground and how my biomechanics are actually working. So if we look at the oldest insoles, we'll see that both of them do have forefoot, or the ball is quite worn out on both of them. But if you'll actually see on this is the left foot, I have a whole lot of pressure on my left big toe, not quite as much on my right big toe, but still a significant amount. But I am also having quite a bit of pressure on my heels where this is wearing out. So I tend to walk, which is the more correct way, of about mid to forefoot, striking the ground first, and then my foot going flat, and then continuing my steps. This is when I first got my boots, and I was doing quite a bit of heel striking. Even when it's walking, you don't want to have a whole lot of heel strikes. So with the latest insoles that I've replaced, we can now see, if this is the left one, still a whole lot of ball of the foot pressure, still have some big toe pressure on my left foot, but you can see that we have essentially erased a whole lot of the heel striking that I had. And if we look at the right foot, again, lots of forefoot and ball contact, not nearly as much big toe. There's just a little bit of see-through on the right big toe section, but again, a whole lot of heel striking is not occurring. So with the wearing down of my boots, I've actually been able to fix a whole lot of that heel striking that was happening, and now I'm mostly forefoot and midfoot striking, which is preferable. So the boots that I've been wearing are the 511 Speed 3.0s. I've really liked these boots. I wore the 2.0s for a good while until they updated them to the 3.0s, and I've always really liked them. They've always felt pretty good, nice and light, and really hold up to a lot of abuse. These boots are nearing probably 2.5, almost 3 years, and they've lasted a pretty good while and handled a whole lot of abuse. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the soles to see on what kind of wear that I've put on these. So as we can see, I am striking a whole lot right here on the boot. So this is showing that I'm promoting a whole lot of forefoot and midfoot, as evidenced not just by my insole, but as we can see from the outsole as well. This is significantly wore down far more than any part of the boot. Here we look on the back, we do have some of that heel striking that I was talking about earlier. The only thing is, the reason this is as worn down as it is, besides it being a 2.5, 3-year-old boot, is at my workplace that I'm at now, we have historical building stairs. And for anybody that has to deal with historical buildings, especially from like close to the 30s era, the stairs are actually quite a bit smaller. So as I'm going downstairs, my heel is actually striking the top of the stair and just kind of wearing out the boot. And because they're shorter stairs, the normal stairs will kind of come out to about right here. They're 7 by 11 is standard. These are about like this, much shorter. So in order for me to get my whole foot in, I'm having to turn out a little bit, which does explain me striking on this part of the heel more often. So those are kind of examples on why you should wear out your insoles a little bit more than what most people usually do. You don't have to get them nearly as bad as that, but enough to where you can see where the pressures of your foot are showing up on the insoles. And most definitely wear your footwear as long as it's not hurting your feet. There is that. As long as it's not hurting your feet, wear your footwear for a period of time to where you can actually see on how you're stepping and whether or not it's more correct or more incorrect of what is desirable. So next, what we're going to go over is how do we actually want to properly step? For reasons that I can't particularly understand, for some reason, people believe that how you step, what your gait is, or what your biomechanics are, change quite a bit between walking and when you're, say, either jogging or sprinting. If you look at the shoe designs for sprinters, they are heavily designed for midfoot and forefoot striking. That's why they have spikes, especially for track and field. They have spikes specifically on different parts of the forefoot because that is the main ground contact. They hardly ever touch the heel to the ground when they are doing track and field sprinting. If you ask professional joggers or professional marathon runners, they will tell you that the optimal technique is to have a slightly forward lean and striking more on the mid to forefoot. Your heel might slightly touch the ground, but since you do have that more forward lean, most of your body weight and power is being pulled through the front part of your foot. So, why would the difference be in walking? And one of the reasons is because the way that modern shoes are designed. Modern shoes are designed primarily with a slightly thicker or higher heel than the forefoot. We call this a drop. The drop is from the back heel to the front part of the shoe. Some shoes and or boots specifically are pretty bad at it, will have quite a significant drop, while more minimalist shoes or some powerlifting shoes I've seen will have what's called a zero drop, which means there's no incline at all. The most famous types of zero drop shoes, even though a lot of people might not realize it, are your Converse and Van style type shoes. And I have an example of one of those here. These are not Converse. These are actually made by Combat Flip Flop, and I believe this is their Shadow Band shoe. These are the new shoes that I just got in that I'm wanting to try out. As you can see, that the thickness from the heel to the forefoot is almost exactly the same. There is just a slight drop, probably I'd say maybe about probably 2 millimeters of drop. They're usually measured in millimeters because communism. So I got these to be even more of a promotion of a forefoot strike over my boots that I was wearing. Those I'll mostly wear for like yard work and stuff like that, where I'm really going to be worrying about my feet. These will be more of my everyday because they are quite stylish and more of my work boot as well. So again, modern footwear heavily promotes a heel strike. And actually one of the worst culprits of promoting heel strikes, believe it or not, are walking shoes. They wind up being exceedingly thick, and they also wind up having a curved bottom, which significantly promotes heel strikes. They need to change that. If you already have messed up feet from just wearing improper shoes or improper footwear or bad walking technique over decades of time, and most people just didn't know better, that's possibly a decent remedy. But as soon as you can, you want to try to fix those problems. So, how are we going to do this? There's a few key things that we want to focus on. One of those is to try to walk as smoothly as possible, regardless of any direction that you're moving in. So, in order to accomplish that, then there's two main planes that we want to work on. The first one is we want to make sure that we are not going up and down as we walk. So if you've ever tried to people watch at any point in time, or if you plan to, or it just happens in the future, take a particular attention on how people walk. So for a vast majority of people, I was actually lucky enough to have a job at one point. I was a glorified door greeter, unfortunately, but I got to people watch a lot. And I was able to kind of tell the difference between people who were either athletes or non-athletes, people who were military, former military, or non-military, or some other type of activity that required them to have body control versus people who did not. So again, there's two main planes. One, the first one is up and down. So you want to make sure that you're not having this up and down movement. This is caused by sinking down with your legs and straightening up with the primary mover leg. Instead, you want to keep both legs slightly bent, just a little bit, and you just want to walk. If you want to put it into your head, imagine that you are, one of the ways to kind of fix this is to have a destination in mind. You're just going to go towards that destination. And by doing this, you can wind up developing having no up or down movement. It does get a little bit harder when you're just moseying around and not really paying attention to stuff, but still maintaining a nice, even up and down walking gait. So that's the first one. The second one is working on our side to side or our swaying. And this is the really big one to where I will catch current or former military people simply because some of the things they have to do really messes up their body. Ask any military person, and they will tell you that their bodies are actually broken in ways that they shouldn't ever be. But usually, military people will have their feet turned out quite a bit. And because of this, they're having to shift their weight quite a bit. So as they walk, they have this side to side gait. And you can have it be kind of centered, but I'm actually having to bend my knees quite a bit. But I still have this outward turned foot with actually their knees are pointed forward when they walk. Their knees are usually not in line with your toes, which causes other problems. So, one of the ways to kind of fix this is we want our knees and toes, one, to point in the same direction, preferably in the direction that we're wanting to go. And then from there, we just want to walk straight. We want to try not to have our legs going in and out, just as straight as possible. And again, for both of those, we want to promote a ball or midfoot strike as we walk. So one of the things that I mentioned in one of my Baki updates is I started doing farmer walks, in which I just hold 50 pounds in each hand and I walk for a certain distance. But again, the goal that when I walk that, I want to try to be as smooth as possible, both in an up and down plane and in a side to side plane. And I want that walk to be the same whether I am barefoot, wearing shoes or any kind of footwear. And by doing that, it reinforces that my walking or my gait will not be disturbed when I am carrying a load. Which anybody that has tried to move anything, if you are moving and you are jarring yourself as you're moving something, it can make it harder to hold on or carry that particular thing. Now, how did I particularly develop my smoothness of walking or anything like that? It was not a conscious effort. For the most part, it was not a conscious effort. In fact, I technically didn't really realize I was doing this until it was brought up to me by one of our karate parents at a tournament one time. At the time, he was a baseball coach, so he was kind of good at like noticing certain things between individuals. But he stopped me at one point, and I was like 15 this time. I'd only been doing karate for about 7 years. But he stopped me and he says, like, "Hey, this is kind of weird, but I noticed this thing." He's like, there's a difference between you and another black belt that was there from our school. It's like you two move completely different than a whole lot of other people here. Everybody else either had a bouncing type step. Most of them were children, which kind of makes sense. They're full of energy. Life hasn't beaten them down all that much. But they have quite a bit of a bounce in their step. So their up and down is more up versus more older people or people who aren't paying particular attention have more of a down type walk. While he mentioned that me and this other black belt of ours, we mostly just had a nice, even walk. Which, when I thought about it, actually kind of made sense because one of the main things that, as at least when me and her were coming up, is that we were told to work on being as smooth and even as possible, primarily when we were doing either our basic techniques up and down the floor, or specifically when we were doing kata or forms. Because technically, once you start any of our forms, unless you specifically come up, once you drop down, you stay the same height. Here, you come up and then you come down, but then your height doesn't change through the rest of the form. Especially in some parts that we tend to see in that particular form, is they will be facing this way, they spin, and you're supposed to have a technique where you come out and stab. Notice that for me, I don't go up or down. Even though I have a shorter stance and I go to a longer stance, my height doesn't change. But there are quite a few people that will stay up here, and then when they do the next move, they drop down. There's no particular reason on why they should. Now, in actual fighting applications, you have an argument there. But in the base form of what it is, you can get better feedback by staying the same height. And that could be just instead of being a little bit taller here, you could be shorter here and then going in. So either one you could do, but in real application, yes, you might actually have to dip down and then do something else. So for fellow martial artists and stuff, if you want a particularly easy drill in order to work smoothness, one, you can take all your forms, and unless you specifically have to come up or specifically go down, try to do all your forms at the same head height. And for a while, you might need a second person to go, hey, you're dropping, or hey, you're standing up, in order to maintain that same head height. Another drill that you can do, and this is one I can't remember where I saw it from, but I really, really liked it. And you can work several different things, but for this one particular, it technically works a little bit better if you are on a smooth type floor with a towel or cloth or something underneath one foot that you can use to slide. So you're decreasing friction. That way you're not having to worry about too much stuff or making any weird movements. But you can do it with none of that and on a kind of sticky surface. But in order to do it, all you're going to do is get into a side stance position. Knees slightly bent, knees at least over your ankles, knees and toes in the same direction, spine and head nice and straight. and you're going to go in this direction. And all you're going to do is take your back leg, you're going to come up to your front leg and then step out. Back leg up to your front and then step out. Notice that my head is not changing as I move. So this is me taking my back leg up forward, facing forward, and then stepping. The other version you can do, and this is like learning body control stuff now, but still maintaining this. I'm going to bring my back leg up and face the back and then over. Back leg and face the back and over. And still maintaining this same head height. And then you can kind of combine those two. You come up, face forward, up, face back. So now you're just doing a circle in one singular direction while staying the same. And then you can go the other way. And once you kind of get good enough with body control, you can just go through. Just go through. And notice I am still not coming up. Now, you can use that drill for quite a few other things, but it is very good for working just on being smooth. So starting at the very bottom, how do we actually want to step when we go to walk? So first thing we have to understand is most people, when they walk, they step with their heel, even without shoes on, which typically promotes more of a forefoot strike. They will still land with their heel, and they will roll from heel to the ball of their foot. And this is what is natural for most people. What we want to try to do is not quite walking on the balls of our feet. Okay, you don't want to do that. What we want to do instead is we want to land more on the ball of our foot, and then the rest of the foot basically settles. Hit with the ball, settle. Notice that my weight is not over my foot. Then my weight comes over. I take a step, land, settle. My weight is still mostly on the back leg. I shift over. Forefoot, settle, shift. Forefoot, settle, shift. Again, forefoot, settle, shift. Forefoot, settle, shift. Forefoot, settle, shift. And that's all I'm going to do. And that's all I'm going to do in a slightly faster pace. Okay, so the third thing we want to pay attention to, and this one will kind of fix a lot of those types of problems, and that is learning how not to walk heavy. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean like need to lose weight or something? Surprisingly, no, even though it's a good idea. So like think about any small type person you've known in your life that even though that they are really small, when they would walk through a room, you could quite literally hear them moving about like a borrower.
There.
Like, funny enough, when me and my sister lived together for a time, at that current time, she was 5 foot, maybe 110, 15 pounds. And she did dance for pretty much most of her life. But it still surprised me, who at that time was maybe anywhere from 40 to 50 pounds heavier than her, and at 5'8", that she walked so much louder than I did. I could hear her in the trailer that we lived in, walking through, just it was insane. She could move quickly, and she didn't really have that kind of a bounce or anything, but she just walked so heavy. And it was surprising to me. Versus me, again, like even at the weight that I am at, I walk and it's relatively more quiet versus that. And honestly, like within these mats, for some reason, these types of mats, my foot coming off the floor is usually louder than my foot hitting the floor. And one of the main things that on why people tend to walk heavy is they have that heel strike when they step. As soon as they go to more of a forefoot strike, funny enough, as if they're sneaking, their footsteps automatically become more quieter. Even for our students, when we have them run laps at the beginning of class as part of our warm-up, and it's mostly kids, which I understand, but they will be so loud, especially here. This is a second floor, so this thumping, whatever y'all hear through the microphones, they can also hear downstairs. So as a means to not disturb them, I tell the people when they're running up here is, my, I didn't know we had a bunch of elephants up here. And that is a clue for them to run quieter. And funny enough, as soon as I do that, they are almost automatically quieter. So it is possible. It's just something that takes conscious effort at the beginning. So if you will think about moving quietly, as quiet as you can, it will fix a lot of your walking problems. So again, these three things to help make yourself walk more properly is land on the front part of your foot and settle. Two, to try to walk as smoothly as possible up and down and side to side. And third, to try to walk as quietly as you can. And if you manage to do all three of those things, they will automatically help fix the way that you walk and the way that your posture is. And if you can at least do that while you're barefoot, then you can start to move it over to wearing footwear and wearing more appropriate footwear for yourself in order to get that correct foot strike and walking mechanics. So I'm Matic, and I'll see y'all next time.